Today we head into a brand new indie game being developed by Winter Crew. Now these guys are extremely talented. This game looks like it's going to be something very special. It's a handcrafted 2D Metroidvania. It has an RPG element to it, and it's an incredible looking game. The demo is actually out now over on Steam. I have that linked below. And this interview is actually going to be unique because it's going to be broken into two different parts just because we covered a lot of different things, and I really want you guys to be able to appreciate all of it without just getting brain overload, because that is definitely a thing. Make sure that you tune in tomorrow for the next video. However, without further ado, it's time to get into the gameplay, some of the different aspects of this game early on, how long they've been working on it, and just a whole lot of other things that we got to cover. I'm excited about it. You should be too. Let's talk to the Winter Crew, shall we?
Fallen Tier has been in development for about, you would say, what, 2 or 3 years at this point?
For the demo, we already spent 1 year on that one.
Before we get into the story behind the game itself, can you kind of talk to me about where the style for it came from? It is a 2D styled game, so can you kind of touch on where that inspiration came from, as well as kind of the open world Metroidvania aspect of it?
All right. The art of the game, it was inspired by games like Breath of the Wild, Zelda Breath of the Wild. And in particular, the character design is a signature style of the character designer, who in turn has a very similar style to Wakfu and Dofus. And people have seen that similarity. They keep commenting it on our social media pages. So yes, for the inspiration and why the art style is like that, that's basically the answer. It just so happened that our character designer has that kind of preference. One game that comes to mind, though it might not be a direct inspiration, is like Secret of Mana, Legend of Mana. The game reminds me of that. And of course, other Metroidvanias like Ori. What inspired us to make this kind of Metroidvania game, going back to the art inspiration, is because JRPGs and Metroidvanias were basically part of our youth. They were classic stuff that were part of our memory. And we wanted to also wanted to show our love for those games, give back to the community that basically raised us as gamers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a tribute to that kind of deal, the JRPG Metroidvania deal, with a colorful, fantastic setting, with the gameplay that we like, that sense of adventure and exploration. And the sense of, and of course the combat, the stories, basically. Another inspiration for the game would be basically Suikoden, Valkyrie Profile. Basically those, back in the day, they were kinda Japanese indie, kinda. Now of course we all know they're part of a bigger brand now. Yeah,
all right.
Basically it's calling back to those times.
Absolutely. And then the next question, actually, before I ask it, the world in the game itself. So before I pronounce it and butcher it, can you pronounce it so I actually know I'm getting it right? Is it Raoah? Is that right at all?
It's Raoah.
Yes.
Raoah, just a straight Raoah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
It's not long A.
Okay, yeah. So tell me about the game world. Tell me about that. Tell me about the protagonist, Hira. Just the backstory behind your main protagonist, the inspiration for that character, just kind of the game world itself, all those things as they tied in together.
All right. The world of Raoah is it's ruled by the elemental gods and the gods of light and dark. Their mythology features strongly in the game world, and the 4 elemental gods actually figure into a lot of designs and the landscape. So Hira has mysterious origins in the story, and the game's story actually. Hira's beginnings are at the bottom of a mine. And the mine happens to have ruins of the ancient civilizations, who once directly interacted with those ancient gods. So Hira was a child found in those ruins, and a woman from the village basically decided to raise him as her own son. But for a time they lived in peace, but that soon changes when monsters attack their village, and Hira's origins basically come into play. You saw this in the trailer. Hira becomes a monstrous sort of figure, and I guess I'm not sure if this is a spoiler warning. If you haven't already played the demo, it's been out for a month now, so I guess we can show it. At the end of the demo, Hira transforms into a monstrous being. So that transformation into a monstrous being spurs on this journey where Hira has to find out why he's like this, why he has the capability to transform into that being, what it all means, and he has to travel the world of Raoah, finding the 22 fated bonds who can help him unlock the secrets of his past, and basically help him on his quest to fix his personal problems. Let's just say his first time he transformed into a monster didn't end well, so he has to go out on a quest to find the 22 fated bonds to fix that.
So that actually sets up the next couple questions perfectly. Before we get to those, can you kind of tell me about the game world itself? So it did mention that it's an open world title.
Yep.
And with 2D platformers specifically, is that something that kind of follows a similar mindset as Ori or something along those lines? Is it fully open, partial? I'm assuming there's a point where you have to unlock different sections of the maps and then explore them. Could you kind of touch on that briefly?
So this game is a Metroidvania. It follows the more or less it follows the Metroidvania concept of you get a certain key, you can unlock a certain door, and that's expressed in various Metroidvanias as abilities, usually some kind of capability or literal keys. We do have that too. So if you have a certain key, you can unlock a new section of the map. If you have a certain ability, suddenly new sections of the map are available for you to explore. However, one of the biggest changes we have to this sort of core mechanic, core feature of Metroidvanias is we don't offer these abilities in a linear way. We don't offer these keys in a linear way. You can actually change and choose which keys you get first. So you can actually experience the game in a different way from another player who would have chosen differently. And that's where the open world aspect of the game is. We want to encourage the player to make their own decisions and find out which places are opened up by their decisions with that sort of design. On top of that, we have another system where we offer a different kind of challenge. You can actually get to certain places without having to go through the key and lock process, but it offers a different sort of challenge and a different way, basically, an alternative path to those same goals you'll need to take to help Hiro on his journey, basically. So it's kind of an open world in the sense that we have a lot of options, and the options also determine what you can and can't access. Although ultimately, if you try to get everything, you will be able to access everything. It's just the order of which keys basically you take will also change your overall experience.
All right, and then I'll hold off on the second part of question 2 actually, just because it really relates to the gameplay mechanics. Can you explain the different abilities that Hiro acquires? They're called the Ascensions. Can you kind of elaborate on those? And then are they upgradable once they're acquired, or can you basically, do they open up more aspects of the world as you get them? Will they make you be able to get to different places more easily?
So the Ascensions, in the game story, there were abilities tied to Hira's past. There are abilities tied to Hira's past. They're basically powers that allow him to traverse places more easily. They give him access to places he wouldn't normally have had access to with his normal capabilities. So they represent mobility options. Many of them you can find in other Metroidvanias, because we also wanted to pay tribute to those inspirations, like double jumps, dashes, that kind of deal. But later on, the Ascensions also have a combat aspect to them. They differ from most interpretations of such abilities. You can call these the keys to the locks, in that you can upgrade them, and our upgrade is actually more like a customization, because you can apply specific elemental attributes to certain ascensions, and they basically change how the ascension works. They saw dash attacks, for example, will suddenly leave behind explosions or launch projectiles, for example. So it's also up to the player to decide which ascensions they'll upgrade with those elemental abilities.
Okay. And then can you kind of explain, so there's the 22 fates, or 22 fated bonds, I'm sorry, that are within the game itself. Can you explain those to me and how they impact gameplay as well as the story progression, and just as an overall?
All right. Actually, I forgot to mention that the ascensions, as mentioned, they're basically like keys to the locks for a Metroidvania game. But the way you acquire them, they're tied to the Fated Bonds. So the Fated Bonds, they're 22 special characters who are tied to Hira by an ancient pact, and relating to his origins. So finding them will unlock the secrets to his power, and that directly relates to the Ascensions, because the Ascensions require trust points, represent an abstract like point value representing the trust between Hira and his Fated Bonds, to acquire them. On top of that, the Fated Bonds themselves also provide Hira with abilities and services, which can vary from buffs, can vary to new game content. They give him access to sections of the game that you wouldn't have been able to access otherwise. Normally, it's tied to their stories, because the bonds aren't just like one-way relationships that just follow Hira around. They have their own stories. They have their own issues that they also have to deal with. So here, even after they've joined Hira, Hira has to cultivate these relationships and basically help them out with their own problems. So there could be quest lines and sub-stories that you'll have access to that you wouldn't have normally have accessed without encountering them. The abilities they provide, they can be like buffs, they can be like combat abilities, actual like projectiles, explosions, for example. But most of all, some bonds, they mesh well with certain other bonds. If you played our demo, the three bonds, they're actually a troupe of entertainers who basically they have a history together. So they have something called a unity attack. Basically, if you have the correct combination of Fated Bonds in your party, they'll give you access to an even more powerful unique attack that can really like change the tide of battle. In the demo, the three entertainers had the capability to raise Hira from the dead once. So it's that kind of game-changing capability, like a super move, for example.
Okay. Can you recruit multiple Fated Bonds and then kind of insert them into different, I guess, levels, or is that not something that's a feature in the game?
Yes, you can recruit different Fated Bonds, and we leave it up to the player which Fated Bonds they bring along, because you can only have up to 3 Fated Bonds with Hira at a time. It's like a layer of customization and a unique player experience. So if the player prefers using fated bonds with heals, for example, he can fill his party with healer type fated bonds, with regeneration types, with people who buff his life, for example. If another player prefers like direct attack types and attack buffers, offensive types, he can choose a different set of fated bonds.
And
in the demo, we provided like a balanced set, but of course there's 22 to pick from in the final game. The limit is 3, but there are exceptions to the 3 fated bonds per party rule.
Also, after you recruit all the bonds, we have this main area where you can, when all the recruited bonds will be placed, so you can easily choose or pick the fated bond you want to come with you along your journey.
So part 2 of this interview will be revealed tomorrow. We're going to cover a whole lot more of the gameplay. We're going to cover the fated bonds and the Ascensions a little bit more. We're going to dive into the details just a little bit further. So definitely tune in for that. I have all of Winter Crew's social pages, all of their different details down below. If you want to check out the demo, if you want to check out their Discord, if you want to sign up for their newsletter, whatever it may be, all of that is below. I definitely recommend checking them out because they are a very talented studio with a whole lot of potential and a whole lot of ambition towards the title that they are creating. So definitely go check that out, and definitely subscribe because there's more things on the way from the side quest. There's more journeys that we need to take together, and we can't do it until you subscribe. So until next time, I am Nick. This is the side quest. I will see y'all next time. Take it easy.
Well, this is what? You gotta finish your sentence, over.
That's it, my sentence is over.
Your sentence is what, Ryan?
Look! Hey! Listen!